13 MiG-21. Author, Wild Wolverine Return to Contents Bookmark Recommend Book. Recommended reading, Cosmic Professional Players, Dologo Continent v Rebirth Tang San, King of All Phases, Stargate, First Immortal of Kendo, Swordsman in the Snow, Sword Lai, One Sword Sovereign, Shepherd Dragon Master, Lin Yuan Xing. Bikook www.xbichuge.so, the fastest update of Thunder counterattack. Colonel Sammy quickly climbed to 2,000 meters. The enemy planes did not appear in the direction of the dazzling sun. It seemed that they did not have the courage to engage in close combat. The colonel was quickly bitten by the fire control radar at 12 o'clock. The planes don't have medium-range bombs, which is really a big hassle. The colonel turned on the fire control radar, and saw on the screen that 15 kilometers away, a group of aircraft was flying away at an included angle of 90 degrees. He judged that this was not a real evacuation. They just wanted to keep their distance and take advantage of long-distance attacks. Soon they will repoint the nose here. Griffin 1, Spider 2, lower your altitude immediately and leave the battlefield without delay. Colonel. This is an order, I will delay them. Understood, just got the news, 5th Squadron coming. Abbas said. The Sabawax cannot connect with the F-16 early type or Xiaolong here, and can only provide limited early warning, which makes the enemy in the distance take the second advantage. In order to avoid unnecessary entanglement, the colonel decided to let the plane leaves. Anyway, the enemy is not ready for melee combat, it is better to let them leave and let him deal with it himself. Pakistan has a professional and heroic air force, but its equipment sources are also quite complicated, such as the interface mismatch or the magic missile cannot leave the launch pad, and compatibility problems always plague this army. As soon as the rest of the planes flew away, the colonel's radar warning device screamed, the enemy plane turned 90 degrees, and the radar began to track him non-stop again, indicating that the second round of R-27 attack was coming. The voice of the early warning aircraft on the radio, Black Spider No. 1, the enemy plane fired 2 missiles, 19 kilometers from 11 o'clock. The colonel lowered the nose and used a dive to avoid radar tracking. He knew very well that the MiG-29's radar vision capability was quite limited. Under the cover of terrain, they would soon lose their ranging and tracking capabilities, while the R-27 missiles needed to rely on radar illumination. Of semi-active missiles, AWACS, the enemy planes are scattered, some are breaking away. Colonel Sammy guessed that the short-legged MiG-21 Bison fighters were probably running out of fuel, which piqued his interest. Fortress, the azimuth and speed of the enemy aircraft group leaving the ground. 20 degrees to the right, speed about Mach 0.5, 4 aircraft formation. The radar warning did not sound again. It seemed that the MiG-29 was confused, and the colonel did not want to be with the 20. The MiG-29 group was entangled in the distance. He turned off the radar, followed the guidance of the early warning aircraft, and kept a very low altitude to chase the 4 MiG-21s, which was his primary target. Captain Black Spider, the missile has been lost. I saw you flying towards the border. Fortress, are they ahead of me? Those MiG-21s. Black Spider, at your 6 o'clock. 25 kilometers away, the formation of 4 enemy planes has just intercepted part of the communication. They are in contact with the command post of the Sarsi base, they may be going back there. What else is there? MiG-29's 4. The formation has turned north, 40 kilometers away from you, and may turn and fly back to Adam Bull. The colonel knew that the threat of the MiG-29 had been basically eliminated, so he raised a little degree from the mountains and turned on the radar again to search for the front. And soon found 4 very close targets. He grabbed the last target by means of radar aperture. The opponent did not dodge all the time. It can be seen that the radar warning devices of these aircrafts are quite backward. Captain Black Spider, Captain Hassan's two planes are 50 kilometers away at 4 o'clock. Fortress, you let the Falcon deal with the MiG-29 to the north, leave it to me here. The colonel almost wanted to take over the entire command. It is clear that Ahmed Hassan is an expert at picking up soft persimmons, of course he taught him this a long time ago. Poison Spider, I'm Falcon, we can't intercept so many MiG-29s. Hassan's indignant voice appeared on the channel. Shoot your missiles and drive them away. Leave it to me. Sami said, switching on the PL-5 missile warheads on the wingtips and waiting for clearance to launch, for this old-fashioned infrared-guided missile. Say, it's a once-in-a-lifetime 6 o'clock opportunity. The two Falcon squadrons immediately launched a pair of medium-range missiles 50 kilometers apart from the MiG-29 fleet of the Indian Trident Squadron. Both sides turned to evade immediately after the shooting. Obviously, no one can hit this style of play. Who? On the far side of the battlefield, everything was still quiet, a lone JF-17 at low altitude, staring at four dazed MiG-21s. Today's battle is over for these MiG-21s, as usual, due to their technical disadvantage, they once again acted as bystanders in the BVR air battle, and now they are facing the rising sun back to the Sarsi base. None of the battlefield surveillance units told them the threat was approaching behind them, and Colonel Sami's ultra-low flight managed to avoid these eye-liners on the ground. The prompt to allow the launch flashed on the HUD, less than 9 kilometers away, and on the HUD, all targets were still just a blip. The distance continued to approach, and the enemy did not notice the slightest. After reaching a distance of 3 kilometers, the colonel pressed the launch button, and a PL-5E flew to the last MiG-21. He immediately turned on the combustion chamber at home and quickly climbed upward. The colonel did not want to after a sneak attack, he slipped away, and he wanted to retain some height to launch a second attack. The missile had almost no maneuvering, and exploded on the side of the MiG engine at the end. The rudder of the MiG-21 of the Indian Air Force was blown up, and it rotated horizontally and fell down. After 13 years, the colonel's battle track updated again. The colonel pressed his nose down towards the rest of the enemy planes. The fire control radar was tracking all three at the same time, but he didn't want to fire before the missile seekers under the wings had yet to capture the target. The MiG-21's maneuverability is quite good, and he can easily get rid of the old infrared missiles in the distance. He has to wait for the beeping sound from the missile seeker. According to his experience, the insurance distance is about 800 meters to 1.5 kilometers. The MiG-21 group in front really started to panic, and the lead captain and a wingman began to circle north. They probably didn't know how many opponents there were, and they were trying to look back desperately. The narrow rear view of the MiG-21 forced them to do this action. The colonel ignored them and focused on the lone plane, which was desperately serpentine and chaff, two mishandlings that indicated that the pilot's mind was going blank. Among them, most of the novice will have this behavior when they are attacked for the first time. Obviously, this aircraft deserves to be attacked first. Constantly changing the direction of the turn, the MiG-21 quickly lost speed, and the colonel had no trouble shoving him. The beeping sound in the earphone finally sounded. The seeker of the PL-5 missile finally captured the infrared signal. The colonel pressed the burst button, and the two missiles on the wingtip flew off the pylon one after another. He lowered his head and glanced at the fuel level. There was still 1/3 of the fuel left. In any case, he would not be able to return to the base today. Maybe he could find a front-line airport to stay as the day before yesterday, but there is also a good side. The load of this plane is now small, flexibility is at its best. The panic-stricken MiG-21 began to release interference again, and the air was filled with chaff and tracer bullets, but these interferences alone were not enough. A strong maneuver was necessary to take the opportunity to stay away from the chasing missiles, the pilot said. The wrong move had caused it to not have enough speed to dodge. Two missiles exploded near the plane, blowing off its vertical stabilizer, and the plane began to plummet with smoke. Captain Black Spider, pay attention to your 8 o'clock direction. The early warning aircraft reminded. The colonel stepped on the turn pedal and at the same time pushed the throttle back to the top again to start a new round of circling chases. In theory, he couldn't win another 2v1 chase air battle because he was completely in the clear, but it is very clear that the F-16 of the 5th Squadron will come to save him. These ugly F-16 Berk 52s have an advantage, that is, the endurance is amazing, and the MiG-29 formation in the north is afraid that they have already gone back to refuel. "Colonel, hold on for a few more minutes and we'll be there in a minute," Colonel Hassan said. "I can hold on for another minute or two." The colonel turned hard, turning his head back, now trying to see what was behind him. He didn't pay much attention to other directions when he attacked. The radar warning device has been flashing intermittently, and a friendly X-band radar with an unknown distance to the southwest is constantly searching this airspace. It is probably the fire control radar of the Falcon Squadron. Judging from the current scanning state, their radar the beam hasn't been able to track the enemy yet, or it wouldn't have been intermittently seen by its own RWS. It's also possible that they've run out of mid-range bullets, and if that's the case, they can't be counted on at all, the colonel thought. "Black Spider, the enemy plane is slightly higher than you at 7 o'clock behind you." It detected that the radar of the SAM-6 position in the east was turned on, and immediately carried out electronic suppression. The colonel didn't do it right away. He felt it was unnecessary. He had no time to care about the crap as he got up, with all kinds of radio pulses constantly scanning his plane, seeing a MiG-21 clenched in the back while another plane doesn't know where. This is the biggest threat, because this MiG may hide in all directions, and this is the biggest trouble, like a shark hiding under the turbid sea.